a warm welcome to Wisdom from North, the place where we're diving into the deeper meaning of life and asking the big questions. My name is Jannike, and today I'm here with Tricia Barker, who has had a profound near-death experience in her senior year of college that completely changed her view on life. And her story has been featured on National Geographic. She has her own YouTube channel where she shares her insights and knowledge gained from her experience. And she's currently writing her memoirs. Hello, Tricia. Welcome to my show. Hi.
Happy to connect with you. I love your interviews, and I'm so blessed to be a part of this.
Oh, thank you for that. And I'm always inspired to do interviews about near-death experience because I've done many of them. And I think it's so interesting to compare different experiences because it sort of gives you a greater and greater picture. And I've never been afraid of dying, but still, it's really good to get that confirmation that there is an intelligent source and an energy, and that it all makes sense when we get on the other side. And it makes me less afraid and more secure in life, actually, that my life has purpose. And I'm also doing a live evening in Oslo, the 20th of April, about near-death experiences. And I'm very excited about that because I'm having Jeffrey Olson coming from the US to attend the evening, and he has also had a profound near-death experience. So I'm really into this topic these days. And I know that on your website, let's see, I'm just going to quote this because I thought it was interesting. You said that you were a depressed, agnostic, lost woman, and you had never dreamt there was so much joy possible.
Oh, yes. That's, near-death experiencers are sometimes not on a spiritual path at all. And that's why this is so shocking to them. They go from 0 to 100 in a split second. And I grew up in a very evangelical Christian home, but I did not connect with my family. Largely, I felt like there was a lot of judgment. And so I turned away from that, and I loved college. I loved learning, and I was a young near-death experiencer, so I was 21 at the time. But I was kind of lost in a party scene, the typical college student. And, I loved reading and learning, but I was not spiritual. And so I would have these panic attacks sometimes like, oh my God, am I going to die? And what's that going to be like? Is it going to be nothing? And I had this kind of Walt Whitman-esque idea about it, like, oh, I just blend with the earth and that would be it. And my body would be part of the grass and end of story. Well, when I popped out of form, I was so shocked and so happy. I mean, I truly wanted to go back and tell all my agnostic friends in college and other places, like, we go on, we really do. Because the minute I stepped out of form, I was certain, there was I had needed no more convincing other than to have this 360-degree vision and to look down at my body and see it and know that this spirit form was my real essence. And then, of course, the angels were right there, too. And they were not. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So let's get the whole story. How did the near-death experience happen in the first place?
Well, I was about to graduate, so I was a senior in college, and I was going to run the Austin 10K race, and I had never gotten up early in the morning. I was, a late night person, and so on my way to run the race, I blacked out for a minute. I fell asleep, and I hit another car at 60 miles an hour, so it was pretty much a head-on collision. And luckily, they were fine. They had some minor injuries, but I was in a small car, and so I knew I couldn't move. And so I knew that basically I was going to have surgery. I didn't have health insurance, so I waited 17 hours in the ER before anyone operated on me. So by the time they got me into surgery, I just bled to death on the operating table. And so they had to cauterize a lot of veins, and they were going to do back surgery basically to make everything work. And I had lost feeling in my leg. So, all that time the nurses would come by and they would touch my leg and say, can you feel this? And at some point I couldn't feel it. So I thought I wasn't going to walk, and I was horrified. That's all I could think about was my car, my classes, my leg, and, what's my future going to be. So I was very, material focused.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I feel like that happens too. Like my father was just in an accident, and immediately I was thinking about my live evening and everything. It was like my ego was just running, and then I was like, are you hearing the message? My father might die. And it's like I couldn't process it at the same time. And then I realized, oh my God, he might die. Like, because it's so unlikely that one of my closest people would die. Like, you always take it for granted that they're there. And then I realized, when I really understood it, I was like, I'm going to cancel everything. Just going to go down there. And I went down to South Africa the next day on the plane. So back to your story. Huh?
That was so good for his healing too, because people who cared and are there to hold your hand, I mean, they matter so much. And actually, the mother of the woman who I hit with my car prayed with me until my family got there. So I was so touched by her love and her concern. It was amazing.
Yeah. So let's go back to what happened. So you lost your feeling in your legs and you had
Yeah.
operations. When did you die in a way, and how did you die? Like, how did they see that you were dead?
Well, I remember that my back was completely open. So I have a long scar on my back, and they took bone from my hip and put it into my back, and they put rods there. So I died while my back and hip was opened up.
Wow.
So I know there was a lot of blood, and I could see that from the vantage point. And what I learned later is that everyone stepped away as soon as the monitor flatlined. So I think the anesthesiologist was the one who came around to revive me. So I think that's what happened. I tried to get confirmation because I knew about Dan Brinkley's near-death experience. So I asked my surgeon after I woke up. I was like, I know I died. What happened? And she was reluctant to talk about it. But I think the anesthesiologist revived me, and then they continued.
How long were you dead? Do you know?
2.5 minutes is what is on record. So not long, but it felt like eternity.
Right, I was going to ask you that. You probably did.
Yes.
So, when you then arise from your body, was it like, it must have been a shock since you didn't believe in that?
So joyful, though. I mean, I didn't have any moment of fear. I was very happy because I saw the angels, and immediately they comforted me. So these angels were in the corner of the room, and they were very large. They were so intelligent. The light that came from their eyes was telepathic communication. And so immediately they calmed me down, and they said, you're going to be fine. Everything is going to work out just fine. You're going to walk. And all of these messages were very quick, but I just, my whole spiritual being calmed down. I believed in them. And then they almost playfully said, watch this. And they sent this light through the back of the surgeons and into my body. And they showed me that all the bone fragments would be picked out of my spine, and that I would walk, and that they were working through the surgeons to help heal me. And I was kind of shocked. I was like, I bet the doctors don't realize that angels can work through them. I mean, that might not make their ego feel very good, that they're getting so much assistance. But I saw that they were part of that. And it was important for me to remember that, because later I would teach and I would have to open myself to the possibility of angels working through me. So I think they wanted me to know that we may take all the classes in the world, we may become, a brilliant surgeon, but there's a magical element to it. There is this spiritual element that can make a huge difference. And so that was my first lesson, was that they work through us, and they...
I want to thank you for saying that, because we connected before my father's accident. And I actually thought about you when I was in the ICU, and when my father was going to have surgery. I was thinking that I believe now that the angels will work through the doctor. And I love that thought, because then I felt a little bit more secure, because it's such a big job for a doctor. Like, if he does anything wrong, like, it's detrimental, So, and it went well. So,
and I'm sure surgeons don't want their patient to die. So I think, in the first bit, my surgeon was reluctant to talk about it, because she was this young woman, and she was a new surgeon, and I think she just didn't want the attention to be on the fact that I died. She wanted the attention to be on the fact that she did a great job. I walked, and I was going to recover fine. So that was some of her reluctance, I think, to talk about it.
So how did those angels look like? Can you try to explain that?
I know they were translucent. They were light beings, and that's what I like to think of them as, but they were not male or female. I've heard people say that they look like a beautiful male or they look like, just a strong female, but there was something about them that was so intelligent. That was the first thing that really struck me, is they had this eternal wisdom that I had never encountered before. And this wisdom was something that just immediately calmed me. It was a different environment. And I thought, I can trust these beings. They know what they're doing here in this environment. And I had just learned from them. So they sent me a lot of information about my life and who I was and how I had been living and how I might live it differently. I mean, there was a lot of healing that was kind of going on in that moment. And even from the very beginning, just preparing me for what was going to come next in the near-death experience. And the angels were interacting with me before the monitor flatlined. So as soon as the monitor flatlined, I started leaving the hospital environment. And then I was flying through the walls of the hospital, and I have a verifiable incident. I saw my stepdad getting a candy bar at the machine, and I thought, oh, that's odd. Later, my mom said that she felt like I had died at that moment, and she was in the room where they were waiting, praying, and my dad came back with this candy bar and made a joke, and they all laughed. And so that was the moment, when it actually occurred. So then I was leaving the hospital, and I had the life review. And a lot of people want near-death experiencers to talk more about the life review, because some people get a very long one. I was 22 at the time, so I didn't have a particularly long life review, and I didn't have a lot that needed to be looked at in great detail. So it was almost as if God kind of flipped through my life and showed me in the past couple of years ways that I could have been more open and kind to others, because I went to college in an area, Austin, where people are kind of snobby about the books they've read and the movies they've seen. It's kind of a hipster place in a sense. And so if people didn't dress the way I dressed, or they weren't university students, or if they didn't like the same books, I just brushed them off. They weren't important to me, and I might wait tables with them or interact with them in ways, but I didn't get to know them. I was snobby, in that sense. And the light showed me their lives and their hearts and their minds. And so all these people that I knew, I saw deep into their being, and they were the most lovely people I had ever imagined. And, I almost wanted to cry. These people that I'd worked with that I had never gotten to know as friends, and I saw how amazing they were. And I thought, oh, Tricia, you need to open up and talk to more people and get to know everyone around you and be more open and loving. And so then I kind of...
Can I just ask you, how did you feel yourself in a way? Did you have a feeling that you had a sort of a body, like a spiritual body?
Yes. At that point, as I was leaving the hospital, I definitely had a physical, spiritual body, and I was able to go through the walls, and I saw my stepdad, and then I was outside the hospital, and it was night, and it was, very lovely. And then I felt far away this like force of God. It's the only way I can describe it, but this higher intelligence kind of show me my life. And that life review was almost like a quick movie scene or a book that's just being flipped open and you're just breezing through it really quickly. That's the only way I can describe it. But it would stop at certain moments, and then it was almost like the camera would pan in. And
so you didn't experience it again. You were just watching it from kind of a distance.
Well, it's a mix, and I know that's so hard to describe. But it's like, it was this spiritual form, but then I became involved in it. So it was this mix of observing it, but also feeling my consciousness growing and connecting with everyone. So as I viewed these other people, I felt a part of them. And I think that the light just allowed me to feel one with them. And I felt their their deepest yearnings and their loves and their desires. And many people around me were very spiritual. They prayed, and they even prayed for me. And the light wanted me to see that some of my coworkers cared about me. They thought I was sad or depressed, and they said prayers for me. And I was so humbled and so grateful, that people cared, and I didn't, open up to them, but I saw, just this. It's like I was inside of their minds for a moment.
Wow. And I'm curious about prayer. Did you see the energy of the prayer? Because I'm really curious if prayer is really healing people, and I think it is.
Yes, yeah. So after the near-death experience, I ended up in a beautiful heavenly landscape, and then I'll come back to that if you want. But as I was going towards the light of God, I felt different people's prayers, and it felt like a wind. And so my spirit could actually feel them. And I could hear some of the thoughts of people. I had an aunt who lost a daughter in a car wreck, and she was praying to God that my mother not experience what she experienced, because she experienced incredible pain when she lost her daughter. And I heard that, and I thought, oh, my poor aunt, she doesn't want me to go for that reason. And then I felt just love, and then I felt duty in other people's prayer. Like some people just pray out of routine.
Okay. I see. Right.
Out of other people's prayer, and the love was the part that was beautiful. When a prayer is connected with love, oh, it's gorgeous.
Right. Okay, so what happened next in the experience after the life review?
Well, I went back to about 5 years old, and God showed me that we should all be loving and happy like little children. And He showed me that, who I was at 4 and 5 was this loving being who loved nature and loved all people. And He's like, this is who you should be, and this is who all people should be. They should be that joy and that love. And so my idea of what people should be like was about 4 or 5 years old. And then I was leaving this heavenly landscape, and I saw my grandfather first. Though he was the only person who was dead at that time, and he was the only person I knew on the other side. And so he was kind of carting me through this heavenly landscape and showing me how beautiful it was. And then he said, would you like to continue on? And there was this beautiful light of God. And I was like, yes, no way am I going to not go towards this incredible, beautiful light. And so he nodded. And at that point, my spirit form just moved as if it was flying towards the light of God. And I felt more love than I have ever felt in my life. So parental love, love of friends, romantic love, nothing compared to this love. And it was as if every broken part of me, every wounded part of me was instantly healed. So in this place, it was like I was fully supported, and I was pure love as God is pure love. And it was the best experience. Like, I understand why so many near-death experiencers don't want to come back, because we can't ever imagine what it's like to be in that state while in this form, because there's always something missing, but we're complete there. And that completeness was the best experience of my life. So first of all, I just felt better, like I was no longer the same person, and I felt completely loved. And I was curious, I wanted to go closer and closer to this love. And as I did, I was stopped at some point, which I, wondered about. And the light said, look down. And so I looked down, and there was this beautiful river, and there were all these lights along the river. And I saw that my own spirit body was connected to these lights somehow. And I saw some forms that were not light-filled and some that were very light-filled. And the light was communicating to me that it's important that we remind others about their light and their connection to God. And then I was shown that I would need to go back and teach, and that I would help many students remember to turn their lights on. And it was it was humbling. Now that I've been teaching for close to 20 years now, of course, I've seen thousands of students, but at the time I was 22, very shy, didn't like to think of public speaking as a potential career, and I wanted to make money, and for God to tell me I was going to be a teacher and public speak, I was like, you are crazy. No way. I'm a feminist. I want to go back and make a lot of money and not have a traditional career for women. No, 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 no.
That's interesting.
And I saw, though, that there would be a lot of joy connected to teaching, and I didn't have a choice. I mean, that was the last thing that God told me to do. And then I felt this dark wind envelop me, and then I was back in my form. And the wind kind of like pulled me back into my body.
Wow.
And that was the last thing I heard from God, so I could never go against it. I was like, okay, I'll teach, and I'll do what you said. And it has been the best career possible. It has been amazing. I've loved every minute of it.
That's good to hear, because I would assume that God wouldn't want you to do anything you didn't want to do. You know? So it was probably there in you.
Yes.
If you opened up. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering about that reality in a way. If you can kind of explain how you perceive the reality. Was it like what you were thinking of appeared, for instance?
No, I was kind of surprised by the heavenly landscape. It was so beautiful. First of all, it was very deep green. It was as if, all the pain of the earth or, the decay, it was as if there was no decay. It was all just pure life. It was all pure love. And one of the messages that I received in that state was love is all that matters and all that we take with us. And I thought afterwards, oh, what a hippie statement, what a hippie slogan. How could love be all that matters? But in that environment, it truly was. Every bit of love that I had in my heart, every good experience was alive and well. And in that environment, that heavenly landscape, it was just perfect. It was just perfection. The grass was deep green. The river was completely clear. The sun was bright without a cloud in the sky. It was just this perfection, really. And I don't feel that I created it. I feel that it was just shown to me as perfection, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, because I was wondering, sun on the other side. Do they have a sun? Because it looks like Earth, and I would assume that there would be a lot of other things, not just Earth things on the other side in a way, because we are used to planet Earth, but there's so much more in the universe. And I think there's so much more, like even animals and stuff we've never seen. So I was curious if you maybe saw something else that wasn't Earth-like.
Well, I think as I was nearing God, what I got the sense of is that once you merge with that light, then you'd understand the universe, or you'd understand much more of the workings. But angels were there to comfort me, and I almost think the heavenly landscape is there to comfort us too, because nature comforts us. And so I feel that a lot of these forms or a lot of the images are just created so that we get used to being in this environment, because it's different. It is a different environment to not have the physical form. And so it's preparation, perhaps. That's how I've tried to imagine it.
Right.
But I felt like there was so much more knowledge that I could have had I merged completely with God. But I was stopped and just given that one piece of information.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I interviewed Eben Alexander, and he said that he got the answers to everything. And I was like, wow, I wish I had that. That must have been amazing. And I hope he's writing more and more books to explain what he knows. But so maybe he kind of went longer into it than you did, perhaps.
Yeah. I do not. I'm not one of the people, and I know there are several people like Dennon Brinkley and even Alexander and Howard Storm, who got a ton of messages that were about the future. And I didn't get messages like that. I only saw that I was, in a sense, to be a light worker, and that I was to remind as many people as possible about their spirits and about their purpose in life. And that was a big change for me, I think, at that point. Yeah,
certainly. So now, after you had that experience, did you, I assume you reflect a lot about like other near-death experiences, and why they were different from yours, because there are some who have terrible near-death experiences.
I know, and I wondered about that.
Yeah, you have, yeah.
I don't have the answers other than I know that mine was beautiful and I was very afraid of death, and then I was no longer afraid of death. The physical aspects of that are painful. I think whatever the case is, I've talked with many near-death experiencers, even the negative ones give them more excitement for life. So I think that I came back totally changed. I was excited about my mission. I was excited about being alive. I was gleeful about the smallest moment. And I think that even people who have a near-death experience that's negative, they come back with that joy because they want to just do things better, in a sense. And I don't think that good people have good near-death experiences and bad people have bad near-death experiences. I think it's just we have the experience we have, and it's meant for us to learn something from.
I think so too, that we experience different things because you needed that and another person needs something else. And I think the design, God is like perfect in that way. Yeah. So there are some who have experienced that they are much more sensitive after having been on the other side. Yeah. Have you experienced that?
Definitely. So that was so jarring. Even when I was highly medicated and I had a lot of morphine running through my system in those 9 days after the operation, I immediately was way more emotionally sensitive, as if I could pick up on what my family was thinking or what they were feeling. So different family members, and I very much wanted to talk about God. So I would grab nurses' hands and say, do you believe in God? Oh, God's so beautiful. God's so lovely. Let's talk about him. They're like, yeah, I believe in God. I was just in this state of wanting to process my near-death experience, and other people would brush me off. And I felt sad, but I also still remembered the incredible light and beauty that I had experienced. And I just would close my eyes and think about it. And so in those moments, I didn't want to lose what I had experienced. And I feared that I might. So I asked my grandmother to get me a notebook paper. And I wrote, even in just out of ICU, I wrote down what the angels looked like, what I had experienced. And then later I realized you never forget a moment like that. That's the most vivid moment of my life. But in that moment, I was afraid. And then as I recovered, I realized I had some psychic flashes that were very jarring. So many times I would know what was going to happen 10 minutes before it happened. So I would get a scene that would flash in my head. I would see exactly what would happen. And it could be something so silly as a man with a white dog is going to walk by, and the cook is going to, I came back to college and worked at a restaurant, and the cook is going to ask me where I'm from. And then the exact scene would happen. And I would be like, well, how did that happen? And so my whole life would just kind of, for a while, would just be on preview before it happened. And that was jarring.
Wow. Did it help you in some way? Sometimes?
It did and it didn't. I decided that I prayed to God and I said, please just bring that kind of knowledge to me in dreams. So if I'm going to face something difficult the next day, like with a student, give me that precognition in a dream so that I'll be better prepared and know what to do. And so eventually it just became something that was given to me the night before. And it could be helpful in those instances, but it's not 100% reliable, so I don't get everything.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think, I mean, when you go to fortune tellers or clairvoyants, I mean, they can never say for sure that this is your future, because I think we have different timelines. What do you think about that? What do you think about time and timelines and future possibilities?
That's an interesting thought. I would get guidance to do certain things, and I got guidance to go to Korea and teach. So when I came back to college, I finished my teaching certification, and I saw this airplane flying, and I was like, I need to go to Asia. And it was just this moment. But I think I didn't see at that time that those are just possibilities that I could have weighed. I thought, because I saw it, I need to go do it. And so I became very impulsive. And I was like, I saw this, I need to do it. And I think that people need to carefully weigh, and look at all the possibilities that could come from any choice. And and decide, that if that choice is right or not for them.
Right.
But
Okay. Yeah, but that's good to know that, because I don't like the thought that everything is set in stone, like my future is set in stone. But
yeah.
do you think we have a destiny nevertheless?
I think that our soul has certain longings. So when I look back as being a very young child, I longed to help people. That was my heart's greatest desire. So when I saw these kids starving in Africa, these commercials, I went outside and I pretended to feed them, even though I was a very poor kid and didn't have a lot myself. I just longed to help others. And so I think maybe God saw that part of me as the very important part of who I am, my soul's essence. And he saw that, or she saw, Mother, Father, God saw that I could help others as a teacher. And so this was part of my soul's mission. Now, how that played out, it doesn't even matter, whether it's teaching, whether it's doing videos, whether it's just going to the store and talking with someone. If you are giving that kindness and love and making someone's day better or opening their minds in some way, then you're creating light in this world. And so I think our souls have a yearning and that's our destiny, but it plays out in so many different ways. At least that's how I see it.
Do you believe that there's a darkness out there, or that is separate from the love, or that everything is love and the darkness is just a part of the light? It's just a different way of seeing the light, in a way, experiencing it?
Yeah, so that's a big part of the book that I'm writing, because I was so young and innocent and full of love, this 22-year-old young woman. And I was oblivious to the darkness. I was oblivious to how to protect myself in this world. And I think part of my work is to remind young near-death experiencers how to protect themselves. So part of my story is kind of a tough story, and that I lived in this blissful, happy state of connection with everyone, and just I loved teaching and I loved my life so much. But when I was in South Korea, I was asleep in my bed, and a acquaintance of a friend came in and raped me in this foreign country. And so I was shocked and horrified, and I was this sensitive soul, who was completely open to people. I tried to fight in that moment, and then, it was totally shocking. The South Koreans look at foreign women in a different way than they look at South Korean women. And all of my Korean female friends says, don't even bother going to the police. Don't bother with this. And so I just tried to spread the word as much as I could to other English teachers and tell them that there are dangers that you might face and to really protect yourself. But that moment in time, I thought, did I manifest this? I went through this horrible moment where I thought, how could I have brought this into my life? And then it took many years for me to realize that, no, I'm just a young woman who was walking through this world, and I experienced this. And part of my journey is to heal it within myself and to help other people heal. And so it is possible to heal, but it certainly took away a lot of that light and connection for a time. I felt as if something was shot right through me, and I could see my energetic form, and it looked as if I'd been shot. It looked like I had this wound, that just kind of went through me. And when I met with other rape victims and rape survivors, I saw that there were different layers of healing that had occurred, as if they were, like they were sewing themselves back together in a way. And it was beautiful, but it was also very painful, because when you saw someone who was just wide open with that wound, then you saw, oh, they have a long way to go, that there's a lot of healing to be done, and it's a long journey. And so I didn't know why I was fated to have that until years later. So many of my students, male and female, so even young boys and young girls would come to me and tell me their stories of being molested or raped, or, sometimes in a crisis situation, I'd have to call CPS and deal with something that was going on in the home at that moment. And I was so good in those crisis situations because I understood all the things that didn't happen for me. I had to make sure that they were supported, they were loved, they called the police. This was, I had to make sure that everything was done correctly and right for them. And so I can't tell you how many students I've met over the years from all ages, from junior high, high school, and college, and various levels of recovery from this. And they were drawn to me. I mean, I was the safe person that they could talk to. And so that full circle. So for many years, I was undoubtedly angry and upset, and I had to go through the full healing process. But I realized that whatever our wounds are, they just prepare us to be so much stronger and so much more loving in this world. So I clearly see that what I didn't receive, I can give to others.
Wow, I didn't know that. Wow. It seems like truly that you have a mission in life. I mean, I think we all do, but I think some maybe have easier lives than others. Even from each perspective, our problems and our dramas are just as important. But still, I think sometimes I think we live many lives. That's my truth as of now. And that maybe sometimes you have easier life and other times you have more difficult lives. And certainly you have been tested in a way. And also really making and transforming and making this into something beautiful. And when you said that sometimes we have wounds to become stronger, I really identify with that because I recognize the same in myself now with my father, almost having lost him, then feeling even more love. And I feel like I came home from South Africa as a different person. So yeah, it's really powerful in a way.
It is.
Yeah.
And this idea that love is all that matters. And when you go through something traumatic like that, I was like, no, it isn't. This is horrible. Like love is not all that matters, and I got very angry. But what I realized is that as time goes on, that event doesn't matter as much as the love that I give. So all the love that I give to my students heals me in ways I could never dream of being healed. And every kid that I saved, or every kid that I gave some love to, or every woman that I connected with, and she got to tell her story for the first time, and I told her to go to the Rape Crisis Center, or I gave her steps for her healing, then I feel that part of my own wound got stronger and stronger and stronger.
Yeah, I think we're connected that way, that when we give love and we are healed ourselves, because we are ultimately, from a very high perspective, we're one, yeah. I believe. So you work today. Are you still working as a teacher?
I am. I teach at a community college, and I teach creative writing and English. And the strange thing is that 2 or 3 years ago, I was walking up the stairs at my campus, and I heard this booming, loud message from God that said, your mission is done. Your mission is completed. And you do not have to teach. You can do whatever you want from this point forward. And I was like, you mean I could just do nothing? But I need money. And I was very confused about what it is I was supposed to do. And I've continued to teach. But then I thought, well, what if my mission is over and I don't have a particularly long life? I want people to know my story and my near-death experience. So I started writing the book, and I thought, well, maybe the book can be a platform to where I can reach even more young women and men at college campuses. Maybe I can do more speaking events and more events where I can work with larger groups of people. And so that was where I thought the natural progression might go with that for now.
So you didn't really tell people about your experience before now?
I told all of my classes. So most of my classes, I would tell my story to, and I told the National Geographic in April, I told them my story, and then I survived Beyond and Back, that series. I told my story because I wanted people to not fear death. I know a lot of people walk around and fear death. And so
but earlier in your life, you didn't talk about it that much?
Not too much, just with students and in a few IANS gatherings, but I didn't promote it or put it out there in any way until I got this message from God that, I'm free to do what I want.
So I'm curious, how did this voice, what kind of voice was that?
It was so shocking. So it was as if my whole head just heard this loud message that was undeniable. So every other sense was shut down for a minute. I grabbed the stairwell and I was like, okay, I cannot deny this. This is so massive, this communication that It's undeniable. And then I laughed a little because I thought, well, am I going to die? Maybe I was just here for these 20 years to teach, and then that's it. And then I realized that no matter what I choose to do, as long as I do it with that same energy that I went into teaching with. So I went into the classroom believing angels could work through me, believing that even if I met this kid who was a gangster and he was going to drop out, if I just gave him some information that might help his life later down the road, that I was doing a good job. I didn't look at success in the academic way of, did he graduate? Did he do? And I was like, no, you never know what spiritual message and what imprint you're leaving on someone to help them in their life later. So I went in with a different kind of idea of how I wanted to help students. Certainly I wanted them to stay in school and succeed and have great jobs and, all of those things as well. But I went into teaching with this pure love for all people. So even the most rebellious, angry student, I was able to take my ego out of it and go, what's going on with you? And to get to the bottom. And with that kind of energy, you can transform people pretty quickly.
I think so too. Yeah, with your energy. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I realized that, well, whatever I do, if I want to stay in teaching, I can still do that with that same energy. If I want to do something else, then if I bring that energy to it, then it will still be of the light and a good thing.
Wow, I'm just thinking about how lucky those kids were to have you as a teacher. I mean, what a blessing. What a blessing. Oh. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. So one last question now. The angels, can we communicate with them even though we don't see them or don't really know if they exist? Like, I don't have an experience that they do, but can I communicate with them?
Yes, and I think the best way to do that, and the way that I do it now, is through meditation. So if you can get into that meditative state and just clear everything that you're thinking about out of yourself and bring in peaceful light and love of God, then you can actually verbally call on the angels that you want. So say you want a particular archangel and ask for healing or for blessing, or for, many times I do suffer physical pain, as the years have gone on. And so I'll call on a certain angel to help me with that pain in a certain moment. And if I breathe, I can feel the energy shift, and I can feel that, some of the pain lessens. It doesn't stay completely healed. So maybe I need to keep working with this. But as I do it more and more frequently, then that problem becomes better. And so I think you just look for an energetic shift. I don't see them in the same way that I did when I was out of form. Okay. So I know maybe some people visually see angels, but I just feel an energy shift and a love, and I know that their presence is there with me. And so I think if you can feel a shift, then you are communicating with them.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing this. I loved hearing about your experience, and there's so much more we could have gone into. Get a lot of questions in my mind, but I think this is enough for now, and we can maybe talk again. But thank you so much, Tricia, and all the best with your work.
Yes, all the best with you, and I'm so happy to hear that your dad is doing better. I prayed a lot for him.
Thank you so much for that. I just made this vlog, and shared a little bit about the story, and so many people wrote me so many beautiful comments, and I really think it helps because it could have gone both ways, and it seems like he's surviving, and I think it's thanks to all the love and the doctor and everything compiled together. So I'm so thankful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.
And thank you for watching, guys. Much light from Oslo and the US. And remember to subscribe to my channel if you haven't before.